Mary and Mercy were just 13-year-old twin girls, born with innocent hearts but forced to survive the cold streets with nothing but each other. Every day, they battled hunger, insults, and rejection, invisible to the world that walked past them. But one day, fate tested them in a way they never imagined. They found a dying man, gasping for life in a lonely alley. What they didn't know was that he wasn't just any man, he was a billionaire. Would two homeless children really be able to save the life of someone the whole world respected? What would happen when the truth of his identity was finally revealed? And how could their act of kindness turn their own broken lives upside down in a way that shocked everyone? Sit back, grab your popcorn, and let's dive into this interesting story. The night was cold, the kind of cold that gnawed straight through thin skin and bones. Under a broken piece of cardboard near the corner of a deserted bus stop, two young girls huddled together. Their hair clung damp against their foreheads, their lips pale from hunger, their bodies trembling from the rain dripping through holes in the roof above. They were twins, barely 13, but life had stripped them of the softness childhood should hold. Their faces carried shadows far older than their years. "Hold me tighter," one whispered, pressing against her sister's side. "I won't ever let go," the other replied, clutching her hand. Passers-by walked past without sparing them a glance. Some muttered insults under their breath, "Street rats, they should be locked away." Others spat near them, as though the girl's very existence was an offense. The twins didn't cry anymore. Tears had dried up long ago. Now, they only sat in silence, their stomachs growling in unison like an echo of their misery. Cars roared by, headlights flashing across their small, fragile bodies. But in the middle of the noise, the older twin whispered something soft, almost like a prayer. "Do you think one day, someone will see us?" The younger turned her head, rainwater dripping from her lashes. "Maybe. Or maybe we'll just disappear, like everyone else before us." The older twin squeezed her hand. "No. We won't disappear. We still have each other. That's enough." At that moment, lightning cut across the sky, illuminating their faces, two children abandoned by the world, yet holding on to each other with the kind of love stronger than any storm. But fate was already moving. And in less than 24 hours, these same homeless girls would make a choice so powerful, it would not only save a man's life, it would change their destiny forever. And the world would finally see them. The rain had slowed by dawn, leaving the streets damp and shining. The twins sat on the curb, sharing a piece of bread so small it looked like a cruel joke. They tore it in half carefully, as if it were treasure. One twin held the bread close to her chest before biting into it. "Do you remember, when Mama used to bake for us?" The other twin closed her eyes. The memory came in flashes, warm kitchen air, the smell of fresh bread, laughter that echoed like music. But then, just as quickly, the images burned into darker ones, their mother's face gaunt with sickness, her breath shallow, her hands too weak to hold them. "Yes," she whispered. "I remember. But it hurts too much to think about." Their father had been the first to vanish. He had lost his job after the factory shut down, and shame turned him into a ghost. One night he walked out, promising to return with work and money. He never came back. Their mother tried to hold the pieces together, selling vegetables in the market, but illness dragged her under. The day she died, the twins had sat beside her on a thin mat, holding her hands as she whispered with her last strength. "Don't ever let the world separate you. Stay together, my girls, stay together." That was the last thing she ever said. Now, all the twins had left of her was a torn family photograph, the edges frayed, the faces faded. Their mother's smile in that picture was the only proof that once, life had been different. One of the girls pulled the photo from her pocket, smoothing it with trembling fingers. The paper was worn soft from being touched too many times. She showed it to her sister. "Promise me," she said, her voice breaking. "No matter what happens, we'll never let go of each other. Even if the world hates us." Her twin leaned her forehead against hers, whispering, "I promise. Forever." For a moment, the noise of the city faded away. There was no hunger, no insults, no loneliness, just two sisters clinging to the memory of love, bound by a vow stronger than the cruelty of the streets. But fate, cruel and strange, was about to test that promise in ways they could never imagine. The morning sun climbed slowly, but for the twins, the day brought nothing new, just more hunger, more wandering, more eyes that refused to see them. Their bare feet slapped against the hot pavement as they dragged themselves through the market. The smell of roasted corn and fried yam made their stomachs ache louder. They paused near a food stand, staring a little too long at the sizzling pan. "Move away," a man barked, waving them off. "You're scaring customers." The twins lowered their heads and turned, but before they could leave, a woman's voice cut through the noise. "Wait. Let them be." The voice belonged to a food vendor with kind eyes, her apron dusted with flour. She studied the girls. Skinny, ragged, their ribs showing through their clothes. Something in her chest tightened. "You two eaten today?" she asked. The twins froze. No one ever asked them that. When they didn't answer, she shook her head and pushed two steaming buns into their hands. "Here. Eat. Don't just stand there." The girls blinked in disbelief. One held the bread close to her nose, inhaling the warmth like perfume before taking the smallest bite, afraid it might vanish if eaten too quickly. The woman, whose name was Auntie Ruth, watched them with a mixture of pity and admiration. She had seen many street kids, but these two, there was something different in the way they held each other, in the way they whispered with dignity even in hunger. The older twin, her voice shaking, whispered, "Thank you, Ma." Auntie Ruth smiled. "If you come here sometimes, I'll give you small work. Sweep, fetch water. You'll earn a little food." The twins nodded eagerly, a flicker of hope lighting in their eyes. For the first time in a long while, they didn't feel invisible. That evening, as they shared their food carefully, one of them whispered, "Do you think maybe, not everyone in this world is cruel?" The other looked at the sky, her lips curling into the faintest smile. "Maybe not everyone. But hope is fragile. And soon, even this little light would be tested." For several weeks, the twins clung to Auntie Ruth's kindness like it was the only rope keeping them from drowning. Every morning, they swept around her food stand, fetched water from a nearby tap, and carried heavy trays for her customers. In return, she always gave them food, sometimes beans, sometimes rice, sometimes just scraps. But to the twins, every meal felt like a feast. At night, as they curled up under their makeshift shelter, they whispered about the future. "Maybe if we work hard, we can go to school again," one said, her eyes glowing with quiet hope. The other twin pulled the worn family photograph from her pocket and smiled faintly. "Mama would be proud of us." But fate, as always, was listening. And fate had other plans. One morning, they arrived at the food stand to find it empty. No fire. No trays. No Auntie Ruth. Only an old neighbor sweeping the ground. "Excuse me, sir," one twin asked timidly, "where's Auntie Ruth?" The man didn't even look up. "She's gone. Relocated to another city. Hacked up yesterday." The words hit the girls like stones. Gone. Just like that. The only person who had noticed them, who had given them dignity, had vanished without a goodbye. The younger twin clutched her sister's arm. "She left us too," she whispered, her voice trembling. "Just like everyone else." They sat on the empty bench in front of the stand until evening, waiting. Hoping maybe it was a mistake. Maybe she'd return. But as the sun dipped and darkness swallowed the market, reality sank in. They were alone again. The next day, in desperation, they sneaked into the yard of a nearby school, peering through the broken fence at children in neat uniforms. The twins pressed their faces against the wire, longing, watching lessons they could not hear. One of them whispered, "If we had books, if we had a desk, we could be there too." But a guard spotted them. "Hey! Get away from here," he shouted, grabbing a stick. The girls bolted, their hearts pounding, chased away like stray dogs. When they finally stopped running, breathless and barefoot, one of the twins collapsed into tears. "Why does hope always leave us?" The other pulled her close, brushing her tears with a trembling hand. "Because the world doesn't want us. But we have each other. That's all that matters." The promise they had made to their dying mother echoed in their hearts. Stay together. No matter what. But the streets had more lessons for them. And those lessons would cut even deeper. The days grew harder after Auntie Ruth's sudden disappearance. Hunger was no longer a visitor, it was a permanent shadow. The twins began hawking bottled water at busy intersections. They carried the bottles in old cracked bowls, weaving through traffic barefoot, dodging angry drivers who honked at them. "Water! Cold water," they called out, their voices hoarse, but few listened. When they did make a sale, older street boys, stronger and meaner, would corner them. One snatched the little coins they had earned, shoving them into the gutter. "Street girls don't belong here," he sneered before running off. The younger twin's lip quivered as she scrambled after the spilled coins, but her sister held her hand. "Leave it," she whispered. "If we fight them, they'll hurt us worse." That night, as they sat with empty stomachs, the younger twin whispered, "Why can't we just take what we need? Everyone else does." The older twin turned sharply, her eyes fierce despite her exhaustion. "No. We're not thieves. Mama said even if the world throws us away, we must never throw ourselves away." Her words carried weight, a fragile but unbreakable thread of dignity. The next morning, as they tried again to sell water, a man grabbed the younger twin's arm. His breath smelled of alcohol, his grip too strong. "Come with me," he slurred, tossing a few coins. "I'll give you food." The girl froze in terror, but before she could scream, her sister yanked her free and hurled the bottles at him. "Stay away from us," she shouted, her voice shaking with fury. The man cursed but stumbled off. They collapsed under a tree, their bowls empty, their earnings gone. But despite the fear, the older twin whispered, "I'll protect you. Always." The younger nodded, clutching her hand tightly. Life on the streets had stripped away their safety, their comfort, their innocence. But it had not stripped away their bond. That bond was all that kept them alive. But fate wasn't finished with them yet. Something, or someone, was waiting in the shadows of their next night. And this time, the encounter would change everything. That night, the city was restless. Thunder rumbled in the distance, and the streetlights flickered like dying candles. The twins searched desperately for a dry spot, but every corner seemed already claimed by other wanderers. Finally, they found a half-broken shed behind an abandoned shop. The roof was cracked, the walls leaning, but it was the only shelter they could find. They curled up on the dusty floor, their thin arms wrapped around each other. The younger twin buried her face in her sister's chest. "I'm so tired," she whispered, her voice trembling. "I know," her sister murmured, brushing the damp strands of hair from her forehead. "But don't sleep yet. It's too cold. Stay awake with me a little longer." Outside, the rain began again, soft at first, then pounding, drumming against the broken roof. Water seeped in through cracks, dripping onto their faces. They didn't bother moving. They were too exhausted. For a long time, they lay in silence, listening to the sound of the storm. Then, in a voice so small it almost disappeared under the rain, the younger twin asked, "Do you think Mama can see us? From heaven?" The older twin's throat tightened. She wanted to say yes with all her heart, but instead she whispered, "Maybe she can. Maybe she's waiting for us to make her proud." The younger nodded, tears mixing with rain. Do you think someone will ever see us? Not just look, but see us. Her sister squeezed her hand tightly. One day. I don't know when, but one day. They both closed their eyes. And in that fragile moment, between hunger and hope, between despair and faith, they made an unspoken prayer, that tomorrow would bring something different. Little did they know, tomorrow would bring more than different. Tomorrow would bring destiny. Because not far away, in the silence of a dark alley, a man was stumbling, clutching his chest, collapsing onto the cold ground. His life slipping away, waiting for the only two people in the world who would not walk past him. The storm had slowed to a drizzle by midnight. The streets were empty now, quiet except for the distant hum of traffic and the occasional bark of a stray dog. The twins sat awake, shivering under the broken shed, when suddenly a strange sound cut through the silence. A groan. Low. Pained. They exchanged frightened glances. Did you hear that? The younger twin whispered. The older one nodded. Stay here. I'll check. But the younger clung to her sleeve. No, we go together. Hand in hand, barefoot and trembling, they followed the sound down a narrow alley. The faint glow of a flickering street lamp revealed a man sprawled on the ground, his hand pressed tightly against his chest. His face was pale, twisted in agony. Sir. The older twin called out, her voice shaking. No response. They rushed closer. His breaths were shallow, each one sounding like a struggle for life. The younger twin knelt beside him, her tiny hands lifting his head gently. Please don't die, please, stay with us. The man's wrist glinted under the streetlight. A watch. Not just any watch, sleek, gold, expensive. His shoes too, polished leather now splattered with mud. But the twins were too innocent to care about value. All they saw was a dying human being. The older twin looked around desperately. We need help. We can't leave him here. Her sister's voice cracked, fear spilling out. But no one ever stops for us. Why would they stop now? The older twin stood in the middle of the street, rain soaking her clothes. She waved her arms frantically as cars sped by. Help. Please. Somebody help us. Most drivers ignored her, swerving around without slowing down. A few rolled up their windows tighter, muttering about street children playing tricks. Her heart pounded. Tears mixed with rain. She screamed louder, raw desperation ripping from her throat, he's dying. Please, stop. Finally, an old cab slowed down, headlights washing over the scene. The driver leaned out, suspicious. What's going on? The younger twin cried out, please, uncle. He can't breathe. He's going to die. The driver stepped out, his eyes landing on the man's fine clothes, the watch, the wallet half visible from his pocket. His suspicion turned to shock. You girls have no idea who this man is, he muttered under his breath. But there was no time to explain. With the twins' help, he lifted the man into the back seat. The older twin climbed in beside him, clutching his limp hand. Stay alive. Just stay alive. And as the cab sped off through the rain, the twins didn't know that saving this man would rewrite their entire lives. The taxi sped through the wet streets, windshield wipers screeching against the rain. Inside, the air was thick with panic. The dying man slumped against the back seat, his breathing shallow, his lips turning blue. Every few seconds, his chest convulsed as if his heart was giving up. The older twin held his hand tightly, her tiny fingers trembling around his large, cold palm. Please don't leave us. Please fight, she whispered, tears streaking down her face. Beside her, the younger twin pressed a hand against his chest, desperate to keep him awake. Sir, can you hear me? Stay with us. Don't close your eyes. The driver's eyes flicked to the rearview mirror, unease written all over his face. I'll take him to the general hospital. It's the closest. The older twin's voice cracked. Will they help him? We don't have money. The driver glanced at them again, two skinny, rain-soaked children clutching a man worth more than their wildest dreams. He shook his head. Don't worry about money. If this man is who I think he is, the hospital won't dare refuse. The girls didn't understand. They only knew one thing: if he died, a part of them would die too. When the taxi screeched to a halt outside the emergency ward, the twins flung the doors open. Help. Somebody, please. He's dying. But instead of rushing forward, the nurses and guards froze. Their eyes darted from the unconscious man to the two filthy children dragging him out. Suspicion filled their faces. Who are you? What happened? One nurse demanded. The older twin fell to her knees, her voice raw with desperation. Please, don't ask questions, just save him. The younger twin's voice broke as she screamed, he can't breathe. Please help him, I'm begging you. For a tense second, no one moved. Then the driver shouted, don't stand there. This man's important. If he dies on your floor, you'll regret it. That was enough. The nurses rushed forward, lifting the man onto a stretcher and wheeling him through the swinging doors. The twins tried to follow, but a guard blocked them. You can't go in. The older twin's chest heaved. But, we saved him. Your children. Wait outside. And so, they stood there, dripping wet, clutching each other, hearts pounding, as the doors shut in their faces. For the first time in years, they had prayed for someone else instead of themselves. And now, all they could do was wait. The hospital corridor smelled of antiseptic and fear. The twins sat side by side on the cold metal bench, dripping water onto the tiled floor. Their hands were locked tightly together, knuckles white, their eyes fixed on the emergency doors. Every second felt like an hour. Through the glass window, they could see flashes of doctors moving quickly, machines being wheeled in, masks pulled over the man's face. His chest rose and fell unevenly. The younger twin buried her face into her sister's shoulder. What if he dies? What if we were too late? Her sister clenched her jaw. No. He can't die. Not after we found him. Not after we carried him here. God wouldn't let that happen. But the world wasn't making it easy. A stern-looking woman in a stiff uniform approached them. Who are you children? Where are your parents? The older twin lifted her chin, trying to be brave. We don't have parents. We found him on the street. We brought him here. The woman narrowed her eyes. So you expect us to believe two homeless girls just found a man like that? She gestured toward the emergency room. Do you even know who he is? The twins shook their heads. Another hospital worker whispered loudly to her colleague, probably tried to rob him. Look at them, dirty, barefoot. Where else would they get involved with a man like that? The younger twin's face turned red with shame, tears spilling down. She clung tighter to her sister. We didn't steal anything, she whispered. The older one shouted, her voice breaking, we saved him. Why won't anyone believe us? Just then, a nurse who had helped pull the man in appeared. She looked at the twins closely, then softened. The doctor said he's alive because you acted fast. If you hadn't brought him in when you did, he would already be gone. The twins gasped in relief, clinging to each other. But before they could exhale fully, two men from social services appeared with clipboards. They looked the twins up and down, eyes cold, detached. These two need to be placed in proper care. Separate them for processing. The younger twin's cry tore through the hall. No. Please don't take us away from each other. She grabbed her sister's hand with a grip of iron. The older one screamed and kicked, her voice hoarse, "We promised Mama. We can't be separated. You can't do this." The social workers tried to pry them apart, but the girls clung with every ounce of strength they had left, their wails echoing down the corridor. The commotion drew the attention of the nurse again. She stepped forward sharply. "Enough. Can't you see what they've been through tonight? Leave them be, at least until the man wakes up." The men hesitated, annoyed, but backed away. The twins collapsed into each other's arms, sobbing uncontrollably. They had saved a life, yet the world still wanted to tear them apart. But behind the sealed doors of the emergency room, a monitor beeped steadily. The man's life was no longer slipping away. He had been pulled back from the edge, by the hands of two forgotten children. And soon, when he opened his eyes, everything would change. The waiting area grew quiet after the chaos. The twins sat curled up on the same bench, their wet clothes clinging to their thin bodies, their bare feet leaving damp prints on the floor. Every few minutes, the younger twin would peek at the emergency doors, as if sheer willpower could keep the man alive. But hours passed. Morning light crept into the hospital lobby, and still no one came to speak to them. Nurses rushed by, doctors hurried past, but no one stopped to ask if they were all right. The older twin finally whispered, her voice hoarse, "We saved his life, but we're invisible again." The younger twin sniffled, holding up the torn family photograph. "If Mama were here, she'd tell us not to give up. But I'm so tired. Why is it always us who are forgotten?" Her sister didn't answer. She just pulled her close, resting her chin on her damp hair. Then, the doors swung open. A doctor walked out, removing his gloves. He glanced at the twins briefly, then addressed the nurse's station. The patient stabilized. Surgery was successful. He'll make it through. The girls gasped in relief. But their joy was quickly stolen. Two social workers returned, clipboards in hand. "All right," one said firmly, "we'll take the children now. They need proper placement." The younger twin shrieked, clinging to her sister. "No. Please. We don't want to go anywhere." The older one screamed, "We're not orphans. We're together." A guard approached to assist. The twins fought, clawing, crying. They clung to each other so tightly it took 3 adults to try prying them apart. "Don't take my sister. Please, don't take her from me," the younger cried until her voice cracked. The nurse from before stepped forward again, her voice sharp. "Enough. These girls are traumatized, can't you see? At least wait until the man wakes up. He deserves to know who saved him." The social workers grumbled, defeated for now. They left, warning, "This isn't over. They'll be processed soon." When the commotion faded, the twins collapsed back onto the bench, exhausted and trembling. They had saved a man's life. They had screamed until their voices broke. And still, in the eyes of the world, they were just 2 homeless children waiting to be discarded again. The younger twin whispered, almost to herself, "What if he forgets us, like everyone else?" The older squeezed her hand, whispering back, "Then we still have each other." That's enough. They didn't know that, behind those hospital doors, the man they saved was beginning to stir. His heart was beating stronger now. And when his eyes opened, the world would no longer ignore them. The room was silent except for the rhythmic beeping of the heart monitor. Morning sunlight filtered through the blinds, painting pale stripes across the man's face. Slowly, his eyelids fluttered. His breathing deepened. With a groan, he forced his eyes open. The first thing he saw was the sterile white ceiling. The second thing he felt was the heaviness in his chest, the reminder of how close he had been to death. A nurse entered quietly, gasping when she saw his eyes open. "Sir, you're awake." He turned his head, his voice rough and weak. Where am I?" "You're at St. Mary's Hospital. You suffered a massive heart attack. But you're safe now. You were brought here just in time. Brought here, by who? He whispered. The nurse hesitated, then smiled faintly. 2 little girls. Homeless twins. They refused to leave your side until you were inside the emergency room. If not for them, you wouldn't be alive right now. The man's brows furrowed. His lips trembled. Memories flickered, the alley, the rain, the faint voices begging him to hold on. Children, saved me. Yes, the nurse replied softly. His throat tightened. He turned his head toward the window, blinking back the sting in his eyes. For years, his life had been buried in wealth, power, and silence. But beneath all the riches, he carried an old wound, the death of his only daughter in a car accident many years ago. He had never recovered. He had closed himself off, living more like a ghost than a man. Until last night. When 2 strangers, 2 forgotten children, had given him back the very thing money could never buy. Life. His voice cracked as he asked, "Where are they?" "The girls?" The nurse hesitated again. "They're still in the hospital, but social services want to take them away. They think they're runaways." The man's chest tightened, but this time, not from pain. From anger. From fear. "No," he rasped, forcing strength into his voice. "Don't let them touch those girls. Not until I see them." The nurse nodded quickly. He leaned back into the pillows, his heart pounding, not from sickness but from something deeper. For the first time in years, he felt alive, because of 2 children the world had abandoned. And he knew one thing with absolute certainty. He could not let them disappear back into the shadows, /. The news spread quickly inside the hospital. "The patient in room 406 is awake." Nurses whispered, doctors nodded with relief. But none of that mattered to him. The billionaire pushed himself upright despite the force still in his arm. His voice was still rough, but his words carried authority. "Find those girls. Bring them to me. Now." The nurse hesitated. "Sir, they're still in the lobby." "Social services." "Then stop social services," he snapped, his eyes burning with urgency. "Those girls are the reason I'm alive. I owe them my life. No one takes them anywhere until I see them." Within minutes, his personal assistant, alerted by hospital staff, rushed into the room. A tall man in a dark suit, breathless from hurrying. "Sir. Thank God you're alive. We were all preparing for the worst." The billionaire ignored him. "Did you hear me? 2 little girls brought me here last night. Homeless twins. Find them." The assistant blinked in shock. "Homeless, twins. Are you sure?" "Yes." His voice cracked with emotion. "They didn't know who I was. They didn't care. They just saved me. Find them before someone throws them back onto the streets." Down in the shelter ward of the hospital, the twins sat huddled in a corner. They hadn't eaten in almost a day. The younger one whispered, "Maybe he forgot about us, maybe he doesn't care." Her sister held her tighter. "No. He's alive because of us. That means something. It has to." Just then, a group of men in sharp suits walked in, scanning the room. One pointed. "There. Those are the girls." The twins froze. The assistant approached slowly, crouching to meet their frightened eyes. His tone softened. "Are you the ones who found a man in the alley last night?" The older twin swallowed hard, nodding. "We didn't steal from him. We just wanted to help." The man's eyes softened. He pulled out his phone. "Sir, I found them." Minutes later, hospital guards escorted the twins down the corridor. Their bare feet squeaked against the polished floor. They clutched each other's hands tighter with every step, fear and uncertainty pounding in their hearts. Finally, they stopped outside a large hospital room. The nurse opened the door gently. Inside, the billionaire sat upright in bed, pale but alive. His eyes lit up the moment he saw them. The twins froze in the doorway. They had seen many faces in their short lives, cruel, mocking, dismissive. But never a face that looked at them like this. Like they mattered. He extended a trembling hand. "Come here." The younger one whispered, "Should we?" The older squeezed her hand. "Yes. He's the man we saved." And with cautious steps, the homeless twins walked toward the billionaire whose life, and theirs, was forever bound by that one stormy night. The hospital room was quiet, except for the steady beeping of the heart monitor. The billionaire's eyes shimmered with emotion as he looked at the two thin, trembling girls standing near his bed. He gestured again with his hand. "Come closer, please." The twins exchanged wary glances. They had learned long ago that adults with kind faces often had cruel intentions. But slowly, they edged forward until they stood at his bedside. The billionaire's lips trembled as he spoke. "You saved me. When the whole world passed me by, you didn't. I owe you my life." The younger twin shifted uncomfortably. We didn't do it for money." The older one added firmly, "We don't want pity." Her voice, though quiet, carried the strength of years surviving cruelty. The billionaire's eyes widened. "No, not pity. Gratitude. Respect. Family." His voice broke slightly on the last word. The girls froze. Family. It was a word that had been ripped from them too many times. The younger twin shook her head. "People always say nice things. Then they leave. Everyone leaves." The billionaire felt a lump rise in his throat. He wanted to tell them he understood, that he too had lost everything that mattered. But instead, he forced himself to stay gentle. "I'm not leaving," he whispered. "Not after what you did for me. You gave me back my life. Let me give you a chance at yours." The older twin narrowed her eyes, protective, suspicious. "Why? You don't even know us. People like you never care about people like us." The billionaire's chest tightened. She was right. He had lived in glass towers and gated mansions, far from the suffering on the streets. But now, looking at these girls, he felt the raw truth. "I didn't know you before," he admitted, his voice low. "But now, I can never forget you. The world might see you as nothing. But to me, you are everything." The room went still. The younger twin's eyes shimmered with tears. She tried to blink away. The older twin looked down at the worn family photograph clutched in her hand, then back at the billionaire. She whispered, almost accusingly, "If you really mean that, then prove it." The billionaire nodded without hesitation. "I will. But winning their trust wouldn't be easy. For children who had been betrayed by life itself, words weren't enough. He would have to fight for their hearts." The silence in the hospital room felt heavy, like the air itself was holding its breath. The twins stood close together, hands intertwined, their faces still guarded. The older twin slowly reached into the pocket of her torn dress. With trembling fingers, she pulled out a small, crumpled piece of paper, the only thing they had ever truly protected. A photograph. Its edges were frayed, the colors faded. But the faces were still visible. A mother with a tired but radiant smile, a man standing beside her, and two little girls, the twins, in her arms. The older twin held it up, her voice shaking. "This is all we have left. Our mama, she told us never to let go of each other. Then she got sick. And then, she was gone." Her sister's eyes filled with tears as she added softly, "We promised her we'd stay together. No matter what. This picture, it's the only proof we ever had a family." The billionaire leaned forward, his hands trembling as he reached for the photograph. But the twins pulled it back instinctively, fear flashing in their eyes. No, the younger one cried. It's all we have. We can't lose it. The man's chest tightened. He raised his hands gently, reassuring. I'm not taking it away. I swear. I just wanted to see. The older twin studied his face, searching for any sign of deception. After a long moment, she slowly let him hold it. His fingers shook as he traced the faces. The image of their mother holding them, her smile despite the hardship, it pierced him straight through the heart. Because it wasn't just their loss he saw. It was his own. He closed his eyes, remembering the face of his late daughter, gone too soon in an accident. He remembered how powerless he had felt, how empty his mansion became afterward. A tear slipped down his cheek before he could stop it. He handed the photograph back with reverence, like it was made of glass. You've protected this picture all these years, he said softly. You held on to your promise to her. That tells me everything I need to know about you both. The twins clutched the photo tightly to their chests, their eyes wide. No one had ever looked at their pain with such respect before. The billionaire took a deep, shaky breath. From now on, you won't have to hold on to her memory alone. I'll help you keep it alive. For the first time since meeting him, the twins didn't look away. They didn't fully trust him yet, but in that moment, a door cracked open in their hearts. 2 days later, the twins sat in the back seat of a sleek black car, their wide eyes staring out the tinted windows as the city streets rolled past. For children who had walked barefoot on cracked sidewalks, this ride felt like another world. The billionaire sat across from them, his body still weak from recovery but his gaze steady on the girls. He said little, not wanting to overwhelm them. But inside, his heart beat with a strange mixture of fear and hope, fear that they might reject him, hope that he could become what they needed. The car turned into a long driveway lined with tall trees. At the end stood a mansion, its white walls gleaming under the sun, fountains spraying crystal water at the entrance. The twins' jaws dropped. Is this where you live? The younger twin whispered. The billionaire nodded softly. It's where I live. But from today, it's also where you live. The twins didn't move. Their bare toes curled against the polished car floor as if bracing for the moment someone would laugh and tell them it was all a cruel joke. But when the doors opened, maids rushed forward with warm towels. A chef appeared with a tray of fresh bread rolls and fruit. The smell alone made the girls dizzy. The billionaire stepped out first, then held out his hand. Come. You're safe here. Hesitant, the older twin stepped forward, pulling her sister along. They crossed the threshold into the mansion, their eyes darting everywhere, chandeliers, marble floors, walls lined with paintings. It felt like stepping into a dream that didn't belong to them. That evening, a maid showed them to their new bedroom. 2 soft beds, side by side, covered in thick blankets. A wardrobe filled with clothes in their sizes. Toys neatly arranged on shelves. The twins stood frozen in the doorway. Finally, the younger twin whispered, This can't be for us. But when the billionaire appeared behind them, his voice was steady. It is. Everything here is yours now. No more hunger. No more sleeping in the rain. The twins sat on the edge of one bed, sinking into the softness. The younger giggled nervously, bouncing once, while the older pulled the blanket around her shoulders, tears streaming silently down her cheeks. Later that night, long after everyone else had gone to bed, the younger twin woke to find her sister still clutching the old piece of bread they had saved from the streets, holding it under her pillow. We have food here now, the younger whispered. Why are you keeping that? The older twin looked at her with wet eyes. Because, what if it all disappears tomorrow? The younger crawled into her bed, wrapping her arms around her. Then we'll disappear together. But maybe this time it's real. In the quiet darkness of the mansion, the 2 sisters fell asleep side by side, still clinging to each other. And down the hall, the billionaire sat awake in his study, staring at the framed photograph of his late daughter. His hand shook as he whispered to the empty room. Maybe I've been given a second chance at being a father. The next morning, the twins were woken not by cold rain dripping through holes in a roof, but by sunlight streaming through wide windows and the sound of birdsong outside. For a moment, they didn't move, afraid it was just another dream. But when the maid gently knocked and entered with neatly pressed school uniforms, their eyes widened in disbelief. "School," the younger twin whispered, clutching the fabric as though it might vanish. The billionaire entered then, dressed in a crisp suit, his smile softer than usual. "Yes. You're going back to school. Starting today." The older twin's hands shook as she held the uniform against her chest. But we've been gone too long. We don't even have books. The other children will laugh at us." The billionaire crouched down to meet their eyes. "They can laugh if they want. But they won't be laughing for long. I've seen the fire in you both. You're stronger and smarter than you know. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise." The car ride to school felt surreal. Other children walked hand in hand with their parents, carrying shiny backpacks. The twins clutched their pencils and notebooks tightly, their brand new shoes still stiff on their feet. When they entered the classroom, whispers spread immediately. "Who are they? Look at their clothes, too new, like they've never worn uniforms before. Where did they come from?" The teacher introduced them briefly, then pointed them to empty seats in the back. The twins sat down, their cheeks burning as curious eyes followed them. At recess, some children approached with mocking smiles. "You talk funny. Where were you before?" "In the gutter," one sneered. The younger twin's eyes filled with tears, but the older one lifted her chin. "Yes. And even from the gutter, we're still here. Can you say the same?" The bullies froze, stunned by her courage. The younger twin clutched her hand under the desk, whispering, "I'm scared." Her sister squeezed back. "Don't be. We survived the streets. We can survive this too." Later that day, the teacher gave a math test. To everyone's surprise, the twins worked quickly, their pencils scratching across the page with confidence. They handed in their sheets before anyone else. When the results came back, the classroom buzzed. Both girls had scored the highest. The teacher raised an eyebrow, smiling for the first time. "Remarkable. Very remarkable." The bullies who had mocked them earlier now sat in silence. For the first time, the twins felt something they hadn't felt in years, not just survival, not just hunger, but pride. And as they walked out of school that day, the billionaire's car waiting for them at the gate, they realized something extraordinary. They weren't invisible anymore. The days after their first week of school were filled with newness, new lessons, new books, new shoes that still felt stiff on their feet. But even in this new world of comfort, the twins couldn't quite shake the habits of the streets. At night, the younger twin still woke up suddenly, her heart racing, reaching out to make sure her sister was beside her. When she found her, she'd whisper, "You're still here, right?" And the older would always answer, softly but firmly, "Always. I'll never leave you." One evening, they sat cross-legged on the soft carpet of their bedroom, homework spread before them. The younger twin bit the end of her pencil nervously. "I don't understand this question," she admitted, tears threatening to spill. The older twin smiled gently. "Don't cry. Look, if we break it down like this," she explained step by step, her voice calm, patient, almost motherly. Slowly, her sister's face lit up with understanding. "You're so smart," the younger whispered. "Smarter than all of them at school." The older twin shook her head. "No. I'm only smart because we learned how to survive. You're smart too. You just don't see it yet." The younger twin leaned her head on her sister's shoulder. "Do you think Mama would be proud of us?" The older twin's throat tightened. She looked at the family photograph on the nightstand, now framed, no longer folded and torn in her pocket. "Yes," she whispered. "I think she's smiling at us right now." Down the hall, the billionaire stood at the doorway, unseen, watching the girls. His chest ached at the sight, not from sickness, but from the unfamiliar warmth blooming in his heart. He had spent years surrounded by wealth but drowning in silence. His mansion had been nothing but empty rooms since the loss of his daughter. But now, he heard laughter again. He heard voices that carried both pain and hope. He closed his eyes, whispering to himself, "They've brought life back into this house." Later that night, the twins lay side by side in one bed despite having two. The younger twin whispered, "Why do we still sleep together when we have our own beds now?" Her sister smiled in the dark. "Because it's the only way I feel safe. Because I promised Mama. And because, it reminds me we survived." The younger twin hugged her tighter. "Then we'll never stop. Not even when we're old." In the quiet of the mansion, two sisters, once invisible, once forgotten, began to heal, piece by fragile piece, through the simple power of love. The twins thought their lives had quietly changed forever, school by day, safety by night, the steady presence of the man they had saved. But the world beyond the mansion had no idea. That all changed one morning when the billionaire's assistant stormed into his study, phone in hand. "Sir, the story's out. The press has it." The billionaire raised an eyebrow. "What story?" "Your story. About how two homeless girls saved your life." The assistant handed him a tablet. On the screen, a headline blazed across the top of a news site. "Homeless twin girls save billionaire from certain death. What happened next will warm your heart." Photos followed, grainy shots taken at the hospital, the twins huddled together in ragged clothes. Their eyes wide, tired, yet unbroken. Within hours, every major outlet picked it up. The story spread across television screens, radio broadcasts, and social media timelines. Comment sections flooded with words like miracle, angels, and heroes. But not everyone was kind. In the schoolyard, whispers turned into stares. "Those are the girls from the news. Wait, they used to be homeless." Some children clapped in admiration. Others sneered. "They don't belong here. Just because they saved someone doesn't mean they're like us." The younger twin shrank under the attention, clutching her sister's hand. But the older twin lifted her chin and said firmly, "We earned our place here. If you don't believe it, just wait." Her courage silenced them. Meanwhile, reporters gathered at the gates of the mansion, desperate for a glimpse. Cameras flashed, voices shouted. "Sir, is it true these children saved your life? What do you plan to do for them?" The billionaire stepped outside with the twins on either side of him, each clutching a hand. His voice was steady, commanding. "Yes, it's true. These two little girls gave me back my life. When the world passed me by, they didn't. And now, they are my family. From today forward, they are not just the girls who saved me, they are my daughters." The crowd erupted. The twins stood frozen, their eyes wide. Daughters. He had said daughters. For the first time, the world that had spat at them, mocked them, ignored them, was now applauding them. But behind their astonishment, behind the flashing cameras, one truth remained unshaken. They didn't need the world's approval. They had each other. And now, they had him too. The mansion was quieter after the storm of reporters had left. But inside, something had shifted. The twins no longer walked through the hallways like strangers in someone else's house. They were beginning to breathe, to belong. One evening, the billionaire called them into his study. His voice carried an unusual weight. "Girls," he said softly, "there's something I want to show you." The twins entered cautiously. On his desk sat a large, wrapped package. Their eyes widened. "What is it?" the younger asked, her voice trembling with curiosity. "Open it," he said, gesturing gently. The older twin peeled back the paper carefully, as though afraid to ruin it. Inside was a beautiful wooden frame, polished, shining, holding their torn family photograph. Only it wasn't torn anymore. The image had been carefully restored by experts, every crease and tear repaired, every color brought back to life. Their mother's smile was clearer than ever. Their father's face stood tall. And the two baby girls in her arms looked just as they had once been, innocent, whole, cherished. The twins gasped, their hands flying to their mouths. The younger whispered through tears, "Mama." The billionaire's voice shook. "You carried this photo through hunger, through storms, through years of pain. You protected it with your life. Now, it will be protected forever. It belongs here, in your new home, where her memory will never fade." He placed the frame gently on the mantel above the fireplace. The girls stared at it as though seeing their mother again, standing right there in the room with them. The older twins' tears spilled freely. No one's ever cared about this picture before. No one's ever cared about her. The billionaire bent down, his voice thick with emotion. "I care. Because she gave me the greatest gift without even knowing it. She gave me you." The twins flung their arms around him, sobbing into his chest. For the first time, their hug wasn't just desperate survival clinging to each other. It was trust. It was healing. But the gift didn't end there. A week later, the billionaire took them to an empty lot in the city, where workers were already laying bricks. Confused, the twins looked up at him. "What's this?" the older one asked. He smiled. "This will be a community shelter. For children like you. For children like your mother once fought to protect. It will bear her name." Their eyes widened as the sign was lifted into place. "The Grace Foundation, in memory of a mother's love." The twins burst into tears again, clinging to each other. Their mother's name would live forever. Their suffering had become the seed of hope for countless others. The sun dipped low in the sky, casting golden light across the mansion garden. The twins stood in clean, neatly pressed school uniforms, their hands clasped together as they gazed at the framed photograph now hanging proudly in their new home. The billionaire walked slowly toward them, his step steady, his face calm. He had recovered well, but the deeper change was written in his eyes, no longer hollow, no longer weighed down by loss. For the first time in years, he looked alive. "Girls," he said gently, "I once thought I had everything. Money. Power. Houses. Cars. But when I lost my daughter, I realized I had nothing. The night you found me, I wasn't just dying in my body, I was already dead in my spirit. You brought me back." The twins blinked back tears, squeezing each other's hands tighter. He knelt before them, his voice trembling with sincerity. "From this day forward, you'll never be invisible again. You'll never go hungry, never sleep in the rain, never face the world alone. Because you're my daughters now. And nothing in this world will ever take that away." The younger twin flung her arms around him, sobbing. The older followed, tears streaking her cheeks, whispering, thank you for seeing us." Weeks later, the community gathered for the grand opening of the Grace Foundation shelter. The billionaire stood with the twins at his side as the ribbon was cut. Cameras flashed, children cheered, and the world applauded. The sign bore their mother's name, shining in the sunlight. The girls stood taller than ever, pride and love radiating from their faces. The older twin whispered, "Mama kept her promise. She told us we'd never be alone if we stayed together. And now, look." The younger nodded, smiling through tears. "We stayed together. And the world finally saw us." As night fell, the twins returned to the garden. They lay side by side on the grass, staring up at the stars. "Do you think Mama can see us now?" the younger asked softly. The older smiled, her eyes glistening. Yes. And I think she's proud. The narrator's voice rose gently, carrying the story home. Two children abandoned by the world, who gave everything when they had nothing. Two sisters who saved a stranger, and in doing so, saved themselves. They had no idea he was a billionaire, and he had no idea they would become his family. But that is the power of kindness, the strength of love, and the promise that no child is worthless. In the end, true wealth isn't found in money, but in the hearts that refuse to give up on hope.